But it wasn't until I realized that I could alleviate myself from that pain. I could start anew. I could be somebody who was peaceful and happy. It didn't matter who I was surrounded by. I could decide how I wanted to react. I could decide how I wanted to think. I could decide who I wanted to be, and nobody could take that away from me. I don't think that I was able to love myself until I looked those dark, ugly parts of me in the eye and said, okay, teach me something. Dealing with a toxic individual, it feels justified to react to them in the same ways that they've hurt us. However I react is how my life will be. We're not able to uphold high standards for other people and the world around us and how we're supposed to be treated if we can't even uphold that for our own relationship with ourselves. If you can see how good it gets when you give yourself everything that you're wanting from everybody else, you will not accept anything less. Some people aren't willing to meet that. To walk away, it can feel like a loss. And that's why we didn't do it initially in the first place. It is isolating, making a decision that you would rather be alone and try to work on yourself. We feel like it doesn't get any better. Like there's not better friends out there. Like there's not better jobs for us. Like we're not worthy of a better family support system. Like if we feel like we're not worthy of these things, it is just so far from the truth. You can still forgive. You can still have no ill intent for anybody, but still not make an excuse. Get to choose whether we want to maintain our peace or get sucked into someone else's nightmare. Where are you going to place that energy? Are you going to place it into the very transformative, kind of difficult journey of loving yourself and respecting yourself, or are you going to put it into somebody who is ultimately trying to hurt you? There will always be people who will love you. I know that it can feel isolating and like you haven't found them yet, but you will. If you stay committed and you love yourself, you will find that in the world too. Hi guys! We are sitting at a different angle in the kitchen today because I wanted the window to be our background because it is storming this afternoon and I really wanted a cozy moment with you guys. We got our candles, we have our setup. I wanted you to experience the storm like how I'm experiencing it. I'm seeing all the trees moving and all the rain coming down and I wanted you to be a part of that. So here we are in front of the window today. Yeah, we have our whole setup. We have our candles going. These, okay, so I only had 2 non-drip ones left. So this one's a non-drip and this one's a non-drip, but this one is not a non-drip. So we might be making a little bit of a mess. We'll see how well this old candelabra holds the wax that falls. Here we are. Let me relax a little bit. I've been running around all morning because I have been getting new equipment for our floral arrangements. Some frog pins, that's what they're called. I got a stainless steel one, which is really heavy duty. I might use this one, or this one was a bit wider, so I might use this one. Yeah, so I'm excited to just kind of experiment and play. I recently have been thinking a lot about how I specifically try to maintain my peace and protection no matter what environment I'm in or who I'm around. The title of this video, Toxic People. Of course, yes, there are toxic people. I think what makes a toxic person toxic is the toxic patterns and behaviors that they project onto others. Yes, I think that there can be very toxic people, but also that label, like just labeling someone as a toxic person. They're toxic because of their behaviors and patterns that they're projecting onto the world around them. Maintaining your peace and your happiness when there is toxicity around you. So let's flip to that page here of my journal. I did some writing about it this week because it really has been on my mind. We are surrounded by toxicity, whether you want to put it in the terms of being in a toxic relationship or your family is toxic or whatever. We are surrounded by it all the time. It could be be our coworkers. It could be certain friends or acquaintances or teachers or professors or, yes, your parents, family, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, anybody. I think that we're surrounded by it more than we think. It becomes revealed to us in moments of conflict or whenever others feel the need to project their own turmoil onto you, right? So toxicity is around us all the time. Everything that comes out of somebody else is a projection of themselves. So any sort of reaction somebody gives you or opinion or expression is a projection of themselves and their inner world and what's going on. So I think that that's a really important first thing to realize, because it has nothing to do with you. It actually doesn't. And I think, of course, we have relationships with people. We have conflicts with people. We are involved with people. You can wrong somebody and make somebody angry. But I'm talking more so about when you are minding your own business and you are peaceful, you are happy, you are not harming the world around you, and others try to come and project their anger or their jealousy, their insecurity, or their opinions or reactions. That's when it has nothing to do with you. Like I said, in the workplace, family, friends, we're doing it ourselves. I'm doing it right now. Literally all of this, all these things that I write in my journal and talk to you about, what am I talking about? It's a projection of whatever I've gone through. Like, this is all just my own little philosophies that I think about and write about. It's not fact. It's my own projection and perception of this life experience that I'm sharing with you guys. So when you are taking care of yourself and you are not harming or trying to add conflict to the world around you, but you feel like others are projecting their opinions or their expressions or reactions onto you, it has nothing to do with you. The next thing that I want to get clear is that it is not your responsibility to fix people. Your responsibility is to make sure that you are your healthiest, happiest, best self. And this is a hard pill to swallow. I think especially when we maybe tend to be surrounded by toxicity, maybe that's in our family or in environments that we've grown up around and we can't escape, we want to make excuses for people. This world is full of so much turmoil and so much pain, and I am all about helping each other as much as we possibly can. But there's a fine line between somebody who actually wants to get better and wants to surround themselves with healthy people, and I think we can always be a friend. We can always lend a shoulder to cry on. We can always give advice if we feel comfortable with it, and be a dependable person in someone else's life who is willing to do the same for us, or who is willing to put the work into their own mind and life to improve, and they want you to be a part of that journey and support them in the ways you can. I think that there are healthy boundaries. Me and my friends, we really do rely on each other to a certain extent for emotional support, and we make sure that we reciprocate that for each other, and there's a good, healthy understanding there and boundaries. If a boundary gets crossed, then we have open communication about that, and I think that that's a beautiful place to be. It's amazing to help people, but it is not our responsibility to fix the brokenness that is going on in other people, because at the end of the day, we have to do that for ourselves. If we are able to keep ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually healthy, then I think we're able to be somebody who can live life in a healthy way and inspire others and be somebody who has boundaries in place. We'll get to all of that. But like, you know that saying, when you have a full cup, you can overflow and help water others. I totally think that that's possible if we're able to put our energy and our responsibility into taking care of ourselves. If our cup is not full and we're being depleted by trying to repair others' lives and feelings and behaviors, then that's no good. And we want to make sure that we are healthy, safe, and happy. It's not your responsibility to fix your broken family or friends. It's not your responsibility to make them nicer to you. It's not your responsibility to try and get them to want to be better. Like I said, do not deplete yourself in order to make somebody else happy who is projecting harmful behaviors onto you. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be your healthiest self. Healthiest self, whatever. What does that mean? What I mean by that and what I wrote down here is healthiest self means to me is knowing yourself. And what I mean by that is learning to lean into the things that make you feel supported, positive, peaceful. So much of the time, especially people like us in our 20s are always told, your 20s are for getting to know yourself. And I was always like, what does that mean? Knowing what makes you feel good and what makes you feel like you're living this life experience in a way that is healthy and brings you peace. A lot of the time it's mentioned that toxic relationships are a roller coaster of up and down. Like things can feel so good and euphoric and maybe even peaceful at times, but then the next second something is detrimental and wrong and there's manipulation going on. Finding the things in this life that make us feel stable and healthy and consistent and good, it means something different to everybody. And of course there's so many fun ways to do that, right? Like maybe traveling, or maybe just moving your body more, or meeting new people, going to school, or just taking classes at a community college, or immersing yourself in life as a young 20-something-year-old and figuring out what you really enjoy and what makes you feel like your best self and what makes you feel comfortable and what makes you feel like you're growing, what makes you feel supported, like what type of people make you feel supported and what type of people make you feel kind of like, ooh, I don't like, just learning about how you react to things in certain situations and how you react to certain people. And I think the only reason that I'm able to sit here and say any of these things with confidence or say that I know how to protect my peace around toxic people is because I have witnessed the own toxicity within myself, like as a teenager, as a young person, the behaviors that I was picking up from the people I was raised by or the people I was around or what I saw on TV or social media, the behaviors that I was internalizing and putting out into the world and onto my relationships. I had to see how I was reacting to life and what it brought up in me and the tendencies that I sort of had to do something toxic, right? Like taking my negative behaviors or anger or turmoil or whatever conflict was going on inside, how I took it out on either myself or the rest of the world. As I've gotten older, learning myself, I've learned to observe those things and break them down and be like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What can I do? It's no one else's responsibility, right? Toxic people, including ourselves, if we have toxic behaviors, we like to blame it on the world around us. And a lot of the time that feels valid and justified because usually it's a reaction. I feel like if somebody does something to hurt us or somebody does something to traumatize us and we act out of that pain, it feels justified. Or if we're in a fight with somebody or we're dealing with a toxic individual, it feels justified to react to them in the same ways that they've hurt us. Knowing myself and learning myself has really been me watching those patterns and observing those things. That toxicity in me, no matter where it came from, is nobody else's responsibility. It's not the person that I'm fighting with's responsibility. Even if they are angering me or triggering me, how I'm reacting is my responsibility and how they're reacting is their responsibility. My bad behavior is no one else's responsibility. The sun might be coming out. I feel like that's gonna mess up our lighting. Learning myself didn't just mean, oh, what makes me feel positive and happy. It's what makes me feel triggered, what makes me feel really angry, what brings up things that I don't want to feel or that I don't want to have within me. What brings that up? What am I feeling? What's going on inside? It is a lot of real life experiences of going through hardship and other people putting you through hardship and you developing toxic behaviors because of that. It is much more difficult to just sit there and observe your feelings and get to know yourself and your bad behaviors and the things that you don't want to carry on. It's a lot more difficult to sit there with those things and watch them go by. And if we are able to get a licensed therapist or counselor professionally guide us through our observations and our inner turmoil that we see within ourselves, that is ideal, right? But if we're not, and even if we are, I think it's important to do other activities that help us, like journaling. There's so many different like shadow work prompts that you can do in your journal and a lot of inner child healing. And there's so many things that we can do independently, getting to know ourselves. Like there's so many things that we can do that are fun and immerse ourselves in different environments and be around other people and see what we enjoy and what makes us feel peaceful, but also at the same time, the not so fun parts of observing what makes us feel the most scared or hurt or reactive, and take responsibility for those things and know ourselves well enough to figure out what makes us feel best, what doesn't, and what we're going to do with that information. Once we know those things, we're able to bring them to therapy, like I said, or bring them to our journal, or this is literally speaking to a camera is therapeutic for me and helps me learn who I am too. Knowing yourself helps you know who you want to surround yourself with and what environments you want to be in. Because I think when we don't know that, and we don't really know our worth, and we don't really know what makes us feel good or what triggers us and makes us feel negatively and react to things, if we don't know who we are and we don't know what to heal and we don't have that stable footing, then we don't know what environments we should be in, and we don't know what type of people we want to be around. We accept shitty behavior from others because we don't even treat ourselves right. We don't know ourselves. I'm saying know ourselves, but really like what I mean is love ourselves, right? Like when we know ourselves and we know all these different aspects, we know what we want to heal and work on and what we're taking responsibility for and what makes us feel happy and good. That is loving yourself. I think so much of the time we talk about loving ourselves as like taking a bath and doing self-care, and like, yeah, of course, that's totally part of it for some people, but actually loving yourself is putting in the work to sit with yourself, to observe your behaviors, to observe the patterns within you, to observe the things that scare you the most and the things that make you feel the best. That is to love yourself, is to be with yourself, to know yourself, to respect yourself. I did not love myself, and honestly, like there were reasons why I didn't love myself. I didn't feel worthy. I felt terrible about a lot of things in my life, and I was acting out of that too. And I didn't start to actually love myself until I started to look my demons in the eye a little bit, and I started to look at the things that were making me feel negatively or making me feel like I needed to react in ways that were toxic or react in ways that were negative or to perpetuate negative cycles. And I don't think that I was able to love myself until I looked those dark, ugly parts of me in the eye and said, okay, teach me something. Tell me what you want. What are you trying to teach me? Where did you come from? Who hurt you? Like looking at those things and really understanding like, okay, that's not me. These are parts of me that are trying to react and help me with something, but where did they come from? Going into those darker aspects of ourselves and doing the work of getting it out, of breaking the cycles and taking the responsibility. I really did start loving myself when I said, you know what? No, I've been blaming this person, and this person for my behavior, but no, it doesn't matter. However I react is how my life will be. However I choose to perceive this reality, whatever I decide to put out there is what my life will be. I can point fingers all day at who hurt me or who did this and who did that, but how I behave, how I react, how I live my life is my responsibility. That's it. And I think like once I started to take that ownership, I started to love myself, dark parts and all, because I realized that I could make a decision. I could decide to just sit there and be comfortable, and just so much easier to react in these harsh ways. It's more painful, but it's easier to do what you've been taught, act the same way that your mom acted to you when you were little. You know what I mean? Like just repeat these behaviors and perpetuate these patterns because it feels satisfying and justified to do these things out of pain. But it wasn't until I realized that I could alleviate myself from that pain. I could start anew. I could be somebody who was peaceful and happy, and it didn't matter who was around me. Of course, we talk about surrounding ourselves in good environments around good, healthy people is best, but it didn't matter who I was surrounded by. I could decide how I wanted to react. I could decide how I wanted to think. I could decide who I wanted to be, and nobody could take that away from me. And it's hard work. Of course it is. That's why I'm even sitting here talking to you guys about it, because we're on this journey together. It looks different for everybody. It is painful to try to break patterns, to try and become a better person or a healthier person, and whatever that looks like for you. It's hard to find that peace of mind sometimes when we're surrounded by so much toxicity, by so many opinions, reactions, and our own inner turmoils causing us to act in ways that we don't even want to be acting like. I know that it is a hefty journey to to try and break those patterns and figure out what makes us feel good. And yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, so getting to know ourselves, that is vital, right? And in knowing ourselves, putting that work in, we are loving ourselves. By doing that, it shows us who we want to be around and what environments we feel as though we are the healthiest in, and what people we feel like we can thrive around and grow around and have peace around. If we don't love ourselves, you know what I mean by love ourselves, know ourselves, everything we just talked about, if we don't have that commitment and that love and relationship with ourselves, then why would we expect anybody to treat us with respect or love? It's like, if we don't know who we are, we're just blindly thrusting ourselves into a world that is full of violence, disrespect, abuse, toxicity. Like, there is so much craziness and conflict out there that we are just submitting to whenever we don't know how we want to be treated, or we don't know what makes us feel good or happy or healthy. And it's hard because when we're young, like I said, we don't really know those things. We know what we've been taught, and then we're figuring out what we like and who we are, but it takes a lot of time and intention, and I feel like we don't really focus on all of that. When we're this age, we're just sort of expected to know what we want to do and who we want to be, who we want to marry, this and that at young ages, when it's like, I don't know what makes me feel most at peace. I don't know what makes me feel most excited and creative, or I don't know what makes me the most angry and what I need to heal before I bring a child into this world, so I don't put my anger or upset onto them. Like, there's so much that we don't know. When we're always committing to that journey of knowing ourselves and continuing to learn and accept and love ourselves, then we will ultimately expect that from the world around us. And if we are giving that to ourselves, then we will receive that from others. We will know what boundaries we need to create. We will know who we want to surround ourselves with, where we want to be, and where we don't want to be. We learn what we do want from what we don't want. For some reason, we are all so inclined towards negativity and what we don't want and what we don't like. And I think like we can use that for our advantage whenever we do see people that we don't want to be like, or people are rude to us or mean to us or make us feel bad and we don't want that. It shows us, okay, what do I want? What type of friend do I want then? If it is something familial, it's like, okay, how did my parents treat me that I did not like and that did not feel good as a child? How can I flip that? Like, what do I want? What type of people do I want to be surrounded by based on what I know that I don't want? And whatever the depth of your love and acceptance is for yourself is how deep you can receive it and expect it from others. We're not able to uphold high standards for other people and the world around us and how we're supposed to be treated if we can't even uphold that for our own relationship with ourselves. When we know and love ourselves, we hold higher standards for ourselves and those around us. And we are able to uphold those standards because we have the credibility of committing to ourselves and knowing ourselves and loving ourselves. And it makes perfect sense that we would want to be treated with that same respect. If we are giving ourselves respect, love, commitment, loyalty again and again, we will expect that from others. If you can see how good it gets when you give yourself everything that you're wanting from everybody else, you will not accept anything less than whatever you are willing to give yourself. So why I say all of that is because it's important to uphold high standards for those around you, because it's important to protect our mind and body. If we're putting so much love, commitment, respect, learning into ourselves, that is a vulnerable process. We are fragile when we're doing that work with ourselves, and we don't want to put ourselves in an environment where we're drawn back into negative thought patterns or negative beliefs or with toxic people and behaviors. That's just very important who you surround yourself with. That quote, you're most like the 5 closest people you surround yourself with. It's so important to be around others who are going to uphold the same standards that you have for yourself. I think that this can be a really isolating process sometimes, because that's why I said there's so much that goes into learning and knowing yourself and your own behaviors and negativity that you want to shed from your life and your body and your experience, because a lot of the time there are people who could be very integral to your life as it currently is, and they fall off, or your boundaries that you now have because you uphold higher standards for the respect respect and love that you receive, those boundaries push people away. Instead of encouraging people to respect you more or become closer to you to try to meet those boundaries, they push people away. People who are not willing to give you that respect or give you that love or commitment that you see now that you can give yourself. Some people aren't willing to meet that. A lot of the time we form relationships with people or friendships or strong ties where we don't love ourselves, when we don't care about our own mental well-being, or when we are satisfied in sharing those same negative patterns or behaviors or reacting to those people in certain ways. That's when we become close to them sometimes. And then whenever we decide that we want to do something differently and we actually want peace or happiness, or we want to live life in a way that brings us consistent fulfillment and joy and not look at things negatively or not perpetuate toxic patterns and cycles, people will fall off. A lot of people will not come along for that journey because like we said, it's up to them. It's not your responsibility to drag people along with you to try and fix them. No, it's like we said, there's so much work that goes into just knowing yourself and loving yourself so that you can be a stable, grounded human that can help others, right? Like, it's not your responsibility to drag people on that journey with you. So I think a lot of the time it can be a bit of a cutoff for some friends, family, boyfriends, girlfriends, partners. It can be a repellent to those who liked the version of you who was toxic or unhappy. So to protect our mind and body, we need to uphold those high standards for others. And we do that by knowing and loving and learning ourselves so that we can have those standards in the first place. It can definitely be isolating. And I think a lot of the time when people are leaving toxic relationships, that, at least what I've seen, so many people have stayed in toxic situations or friendships or workplace environments that are toxic because it's easier than leaving. So much of the time, toxicity includes manipulation. And if you are being manipulated into making certain decisions or feeling certain ways, then it is extremely difficult to get out of that. When you finally get to that place where you feel like you do know yourself, you recognize yourself, and you are taking accountability, and you love yourself enough to give yourself that commitment and let yourself have the hope and inspiration to grow and turn into something better. When you're finally at that place and you have somehow enough strength, or at least you pretend to walk away, and you don't have that relationship or that job or that friend or that family member anymore, it can feel like a loss. And that's why we didn't do it initially in the first place. That's why we stayed perpetuated in a cycle of negativity or toxicity, because we preferred having that attachment or that relationship or that comfort in our lives. It's hard to dismantle ourselves, let alone our relationships and the things that we cling to for support or validation. And I think a lot of the times in manipulative relationships or toxic relationships, there is a lot of validation that comes from that. It's almost like what we were talking about earlier, the pain that lives inside of you and makes you act out in toxic ways. It's like those parts of you mingle with somebody else, and so much attachment and validation and justification for your behaviors and theirs comes out. And whenever you dismantle that relationship, or you cut someone off, or you place a boundary that pushes someone away from you, it is isolating, making a decision that you would rather be alone and try to work on yourself to cut that off and to choose to be alone. And that's not just in romantic relationships. Like I said, it's in anything. It's sacrifice. Maybe it's losing a job. Maybe it's losing a friend or a friend group or a whole side of your family. But in my notes here, I wrote, this can be isolating, but worth it. No matter how dark and isolating our own little world can feel, there are always people out there who are going to meet you where you're at. And if you are willing to commit to a level of love and observation and acceptance and growth within yourself, there are people that are going to support you on that journey, who are maybe doing the same things for themselves, or people who have done it, or people who inspire you. There are always going to be people who are going to meet you on that level, and who will want you to succeed, and who will support you, who will want you to thrive. There are always going to be people who will treat you with respect and love. And that is something, wow. This is the first time I'm actually getting pretty emotional in one of these videos, but I think that I talk about like all this vulnerable stuff, but now I'm getting embarrassed, you guys, that I'm actually emotional here. But like, there will always be people who will love you. And I know that it can feel isolating and like you haven't found them yet, but you will. If you stay committed and you love yourself, you will find that in the world too. There's always going to be a family for you. There's always going to be people that you can choose to surround yourself with. And it is a matter of putting that work in, and it is a matter of putting yourself out there. Even if you are scared and anxious and introverted, it is a matter of going and finding those people and those connections. But I promise you that it will come to you when you are committed to this journey of finding peace and not wanting to perpetuate toxic cycles and behaviors that you see in this world, and holding on to your awareness of that. If you stick to that journey, you will attract others who want to treat you with respect and who want to treat you with love. The reason that it's making me so emotional is like, so many of us don't believe that. I didn't believe that for most of my life because that's what we're shown. We're shown not to believe those things, to just take whatever people give us, and that it doesn't get better than that, and that this is the best that it gets. I think that's a lot of what manipulation is, and why we feel so trapped to stay inside that toxicity. We feel like it doesn't get any better. Like there's not better friends out there. Like there's not better jobs for us. Like we're not worthy of a better family support system. Like if we feel like we're not worthy of these things because we've been told that we're not by other people's behavior, it is just so far from the truth. We are all worthy of those things. We are all worthy of respect, love, kindness, compassion, and support. And there are always, as long as you are able to learn how to give that to yourself, you will be able to give that to those around you, and you should expect nothing less from others too. They exist. They exist. Hey, I am one of them. I respect you and love you. And I know that this journey is difficult. I do. But like, it is worth it. I think I said this earlier, but I have struggled with balancing empathy and creating boundaries. Empathy and protecting myself from toxic behaviors. Because the more work we put into ourselves and the more we observe our own patterns and unhappiness, the more we understand it. Therefore, when we see other people reacting in similar ways that we have before, we kind of know where they're coming from, and we can kind of get an idea of the amount of pain they're in to be treating us that way, or to be treating other people that way, or to be reacting like that. We're like, whoa. At least for me, I feel a level of empathy. Like I understand where they're coming from, so therefore I'm like able to give them more of an excuse in my head. Like I've seen myself do that, where I'm like, this person treats me really terribly, but you know, they're my family member, so it's okay. Or I've known them for years, so it's fine. Or yeah, sometimes they're like that. You know, like there's a lot of excuses that can come out of being empathetic for others. I think it's okay to have empathy. I think it's important to as human beings, but don't let that empathy turn into an excuse. Because if we can understand why somebody is acting the way they're acting, and we have committed to this journey of bettering ourselves, instead of making an excuse, we need to understand even more that, hey, that's your responsibility to figure that out, just like it was my responsibility to figure that out. I can only do so much for you. This is my boundary. I'm clutching onto these tulips for some reason. It's kind of comforting. So I'm gonna keep doing it while I'm talking about this. There can always be an explanation. It's not an excuse. If somebody is treating you terribly and taking out their own inner issues on you, that's not your responsibility. Again, I'm reiterating it, and it's not something that you should excuse either, even if you understand it and you know the type of pain they're in, and oh, but there are all these good things too. Okay, great, but if there is harm being caused towards you and you are minding your business, staying in your lane, if there is harmful behavior being projected onto you and others, like that's not excusable, and that's not okay. We're more inclined to and more pushed to better ourselves when others uphold healthy boundaries. Upholding boundaries will upset people who want to take their toxicity out on you, but it's not your responsibility, and there is not an excuse for it. In an environment environment where making excuses for others helped us survive, then it makes sense why we would excuse any sort of bad behavior we're receiving from others from a young age if we've had to make excuses for others in order to survive, or we were manipulated into it by anyone. And I wrote down here, like, it could be toxic friendships that you have at a young age. I know that that's actually a lot more common than people think. We're so impressionable at the ages that we're flung into like middle school, high school. I've talked about all this stuff in my other videos, and when we're young little girls, like, we're so impressionable. We can develop relationships or go through things during that time that teaches us a lot about how we let the world treat us. Making excuses for others, I think it's more complex. It goes a lot deeper than that. Whatever trauma we go through usually teaches us how we tend to make excuses for others, or however we allow others to treat us. It's an important distinction to make that you can still forgive, you can still move on, you can still have no ill intent for anybody, but still not make an excuse. You can still make peace. In fact, I think that is why you're putting up a boundary in the first place, is so you can have peace. When others project onto you or react to you, you get a decision. So what I mean by that is, even whenever we don't feel like it, we always get a decision. Honestly, was a hard pill for me to swallow because of how much I like to blame my hurt on others and find reasons to justify why I was acting the way I was acting. But we always have a decision. Even when we are not so inclined to make that decision, we still have it. We get to choose whether we want to maintain our peace and protection or get sucked into someone else's nightmare, right? We can either react the same way that somebody is reacting to us and perpetuate the cycle of toxicity and negativity if we want to do that, or we can make a change in how we react for our own peace and well-being. Choosing whatever you do or don't contribute to the interaction is what is going to dictate your peace. If you choose to react in a way where you're going to give into this behavior of somebody being destructive, verbally abusive, manipulative, making you uncomfortable, if you are willing to have somebody do that to you, of course you're going to feel justified in responding the same way back. But if you don't want to be receiving these things, you have to find a way to not accept them. And by not continuing that cycle and by not perpetuating that cycle, you are choosing not to allow it. You are choosing to not let it affect you, which I think a lot of the time people are like, don't accept this type of behavior. But sometimes we are in a situation where we can't cut somebody out. Maybe we are living in a home where our family is treating us this way, or maybe we are in a situation that is unsafe to get out of in the moment. Like, there are so many instances where there are times where we have to be living in an environment that is damaging to us or destructive or negative or whatever. And that is the moment where you allow it to consume you, or you choose something different for yourself. So much of the time it's like we want to react to toxic people in the same way because we want to show them how it feels. It feels so justified to do that. But by doing that, you are only contributing more to the thing that is hurting you and that ultimately is destroying your peace. Separating yourself from that, choosing not to contribute to that is truly the most powerful thing you can do. So much of the time we want that instant gratification of like, show them how bad it feels, hurt them in the same way. And I think so much of my life, I've always had that in my head. I don't know exactly where that comes from, but wanting to prove to others how badly they hurt me or to show them that. The best way you can show anyone how it feels or get revenge in any way is by choosing to not be in their destructive, scary land, by choosing to make your own life and path and journey and peace and to find the joy that they are lacking. There is nothing more powerful and productive and deeply gratifying that you can do other than that. Our energy that we have, like, we can only put it into so many things in the day. It's really precious, like the time that we spend doing things. And I think interactions with toxic people are very draining and will take so much of our energy just by being around it, right? Until you start to develop your protection and your peace that you continue to choose. But like, whenever you are surrounded by that, it can be so draining. And whenever you give into that, that is going to completely deplete you. And I think there's so many ways that we can use our energy to bring us that joy and to put that energy into the hard work that we were talking about earlier, how painful and difficult it really is to actually look at our own traumas and go through the work to better ourselves. We could be putting all of our precious energy and time into that and into attracting people who will support us and love us and into that difficult journey rather than this difficult one where you're just perpetuating some negative cycle. You don't need to be wasting your time on that. It's so much more powerful to put your time into creating a boundary of, I will not accept that, or I do not want to be around this behavior, or I'm not going to react in the same way that they are reacting to me. It's so much more important putting that valuable energy into something that is going to help you and better you. Where are you going to place that energy? Are you going to place it into the very transformative kind of difficult journey of loving yourself and respecting yourself, or are you going to put it into somebody who is ultimately trying to hurt you? I think a big way that we can protect our peace and ourselves is something that I am always trying to get better at. And the more that I start to strengthen this skill, the more at peace I truly do feel in life in general. I don't feel as swayed by my anxieties or my reactions to other people. Whenever I can stay aware of how I'm reacting in a situation that is upsetting. So like, if I am having an interaction where I suddenly start to feel angry, or I want to give into the way that somebody else is treating me and I want to come back at them with negativity, if somebody's bringing up so much upset in me, I have to stay aware of how I'm reacting. And why it's so important to just stay aware of it is so that I don't become it and I don't become consumed by someone else's negativity or manipulation or thing that they're projecting onto me. It's important that I stay grounded in my awareness of how I'm reacting. And some certain ways that I like to do that is I try to just observe the feelings that arise. Instead of becoming that, I just try to sort of observe them like they're clouds, or it's like a gust of wind or something that is not going to completely uproot me and throw me around, like being so consumed by those emotions that you are completely under the hold of somebody else and their behaviors that you don't want to be a part of. So staying aware of your surroundings and realizing that your thoughts that are coming up can be like clouds that you are watching pass you by, or gusts of wind that are kind of disturbing at the moment but are passing, right? Like, it doesn't have to become you and take you with it. So it's just really about not immediately attaching ourselves and identifying with those feelings that are coming up within us. In those moments where you feel reactive, or you feel things coming up, or you are being affected by your environment and others around you, you have to make that decision then and there to maintain your peace. That decision is not always an easy one to make, and it can be difficult to choose your peace over maybe your relationship with somebody, or giving into this reaction or this feeling or the environment around you. But kind of gotta decide as those feelings are coming up, and before it becomes all too consuming, that you want to decide to stay grounded and maintain your peace as best as you can. I'm no expert at these things, but I'm starting to learn more about regulating the nervous system and all these ways that I just like didn't know existed. There's little exercises that I like, you can just look up like nervous system regulation on YouTube and find different ones. But my therapist recommended me this one video of somebody doing, if I remember, I'll link it below, but I'm pretty sure it had to do with the polyvagal system. I know the nervous system and all of that is all intertwined, and that's why people do like ice baths. And there's just so many ways to regulate your nervous system and to not feel as reactive and be able to stay grounded in certain ways. And I watched this video where there was one about like different ear massages that you can do that completely just sort of like center you and regulate your nervous system. And it had to do with like different variations of tugging your ears gently and massaging them. And yeah, there's tons of things you can do, like yoga, physical and mental relief through stretches and breathing. So I know that that is obviously so great. And there's certain yoga routines that are specific to trauma and nervous system regulation. Like my therapist also recommended me one that had to do a lot with the hips and doing hip stretches. I think there are a lot of ways to maintain our presence and to implement different meditative grounding practices in our life. I think that looks different for everybody, but that is the hack. Staying present is the hack. Because think about it, like being present in your interactions with others and your environment and even in yourself when certain feelings of negativity or stuff that you don't want to be feeling comes up. If you are able to stay present and observe those feelings and observe your environment and stay grounded, you become gifted with the ability of, like, whenever an uncomfortable thought or feeling comes through you or is projected onto you by your environment or other people, you are gifted with the ability of completely walking away from the situation once it has happened. If you're able to stay present, feel what you need to, accept it like the gust of wind, observe it like the clouds, stay grounded, then you are able to not become that. You are able to not internalize all of this negativity from others and the world around you. You are able to have clarity because you were grounded and present in the moment where all these reactions were coming up and where all this destruction was going on. You were able to stay grounded. Guys, I am sad because my camera died. Oh, and my hair is a little too close to this candle. I'm trying to get so cute with the whole props and scene here that I am lighting my hair on fire. Anyway, staying present in your interactions with others allows you to maintain your sense of grounding and peace and be able to not become so consumed by others' behaviors that you then internalize them and feel affected and hurt and repeat those same things. Realize that in choosing to respond differently, you are eliminating this negative behavior from using you as a vessel to live on through. I think that the world would be a much more beautiful place if we were all able to focus on healing the things that have wounded us and hurt us so that we don't inflict that same pain onto others. But that negativity and that pain and that darkness exists out there until we decide to end that cycle. We gotta learn to create those mental boundaries in what we're willing to accept. And we know that by being familiar with what we want, what makes us feel good, what makes us feel loved, respected, healthy, safe, happy. When we're able to fine-tune our ability to identify what makes us feel those ways and what consistently provides us with that, we're able to see who and what will reciprocate that towards us and who will provide us with that and who won't and what we need to create boundaries around in order to feel healthy and safe. And then I wrote this at the end of my little writings about all of this, and I said, I'm starting to realize that I can choose the life I want to live. I don't have to be the victim to others' behaviors and reactions. I have the power to lean into what makes me feel healthiest, strongest, and best, and surround myself in that as much as I can. I can choose to observe emotions rather than become them and become grounded in the present moment. I can choose the way I move through and perceive this life experience. And how beautiful is that? Anyway, yeah, so I wrote those at the end of this. And I didn't really realize that those are kind of affirmations. They all start with like, I can or I have. So if you want some affirmations around everything we just talked about, I guess, wow, yeah, I didn't really realize that they can be utilized for that, but I just felt inclined to write that at the end. And I think that those are definitely the things that I have told myself and what I have started to believe. I hope you guys enjoyed this rainy little chat that we had today. It looks like it's not raining anymore. Wow, how beautiful. But yeah, looks like clear skies are coming our way, and I hope that you took something out of our little conversation here, and I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. Just a reminder that these are all my own personal little writings, thoughts, and philosophies that I have produced through experiencing my own life, and if they resonated with you whatsoever, then I am very happy to hear that. I hope that you have a beautiful morning, day, night, evening, and I hope that you are doing well. And yeah, we are on this journey together. I will talk to you guys very soon.